I stood frozen as my dad handed my birthday present to my sister. It was still in the box, seal unbroken, with the card clearly reading my name. The whole room burst into laughter like it was a harmless joke. I laughed along too. But right then, something inside me collapsed. They had no idea that in just 2 hours, I would delete the biggest financial lifeline this family had ever expected from me. My name is Gabriella Richards, and for exactly 31 years, I have been the structural support beam that the rest of my family hammered nails into. I am a project manager at Northbridge Systems, a mid-sized tech firm where my entire existence revolves around mitigating disaster. My days are spent staring at Gantt charts, identifying critical paths, and telling grown men that they cannot spend $50,000 on a server upgrade when we are 2 weeks from a hard deadline. I am good at it. I am precise. I treat emotions like variable costs that need to be minimized to protect the bottom line. But apparently, my ability to spot a bad deal evaporates the moment I cross the state line into Missouri. I had flown into St. Louis that morning, taking the first flight out of O'Hare to maximize the amount of time I could claim I was working before driving to my parents' house. The house was a sprawling 2-story colonial in a neighborhood that prioritized lawn maintenance over actual neighborliness. It was the kind of house that looked perfect on a Christmas card, but smelled faintly of stale potpourri and passive aggression the moment you stepped inside. This party was supposed to be for me. That was what the text message from my mother had said 3 weeks ago. We want to celebrate you. Gabby, 31 is a big year. It was not a big year. 30 was a big year. 21 was a big year. 31 is just a Tuesday in the grand scheme of adulthood. But I had come anyway because guilt is a currency my family prints in infinite supply, and I have never known how to stop accepting it. I sat at the head of the dining room table, a position that felt less like a place of honor and more like a defendant's chair. The room was crowded. My aunts, uncles, and a smattering of cousins were squeezed into the space, balancing paper plates of potato salad and roast beef on their knees. The air conditioning was humming, struggling to combat the heat of 20 people. But I felt cold. I usually did in this house. My father, Grant, stood up near the sideboard. He was a large man who had spent his youth playing football and his adulthood coasting on the charisma of a former athlete. He tapped a fork against his glass, a cliché that made my teeth ache. All right, settle down, everyone," he boomed, his voice filling the room. He had that flushed look he always got after his second scotch. "We are here to celebrate our Gabby." He gestured to me with the hand holding the glass. I forced a smile. It felt tight, like a mask that was 2 sizes too small. I kept my hands folded in my lap, gripping my napkin until my knuckles turned white. 31 years, he continued. Seems like just yesterday she was running around in diapers. Now she's a big-shot manager up in Chicago. There was a murmur of polite assent from the relatives. They did not know what I did. To them, I was just in computers, a vague designation that meant I could probably fix their printer if they asked nicely. But, my father said, and his eyes shifted. He looked past me, toward the other end of the table where my sister, Sloane, was picking at a piece of cornbread. "We know birthdays are about family, and family looks out for each other." He reached behind him and produced a box. My breath hitched in my throat. It was a substantial box, wrapped in shimmering silver paper that reflected the overhead lights. It was not the wrapping paper we kept in the hall closet. This was professional, boutique, expensive, and taped to the very center of the lid was a cream-colored envelope. I leaned forward slightly. The handwriting was my mother's, looping, ornate, and unmistakable. "To Gabriella, happy birthday." I saw it. I read it. The letters were clear. For a split second, a pathetic, childish hope bloomed in my chest. I thought that maybe, just this once, they had actually seen me. Maybe they had listened when I mentioned that my laptop was dying, or that I had been saving for a decent camera. Maybe this was an acknowledgement of the $3,000 I had sent them last month for the emergency roof repair that I was pretty sure never happened. I started to push my chair back. I was ready to stand up. I was ready to be the grateful daughter. "Now," Grant said, holding the box out in front of him. He looked at me, and for a second, our eyes met. There was a flicker of something in his expression. Not guilt. It was more like the look a magician gives before he pulls the rabbit out of the hat. A challenge. "I was holding this for Gabby," he said, his voice dropping to a theatrical register. "The card says Gabby. We got it all ready for Gabby." He paused for effect. The room went silent. But then, he pivoted, physically turning his body away from me and toward Sloane. "Your mother and I got to talking this morning. We looked at the situation. We looked at who really needs a lift right now." He walked past me. He walked right past my chair. "And we realized that this," he tapped the silver box, "is a lot more suitable for Sloane." He placed the box in my sister's lap. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The sentence hung in the air, nonsensical and cruel. Then, my Uncle Mike let out a loud, barking laugh. "Classic Grant," Mike shouted, "keeping everyone on their toes." And just like that, the tension broke. The room erupted into laughter. They laughed as if it were a hilarious prank, a brilliant subversion of expectations. I sat frozen. My half-risen body sank back into the chair. My hands were still gripping the napkin. I could feel the texture of the cheap paper dissolving against my sweating palms. Sloane looked down at the box. She did not look confused. She did not look at me to check if this was okay. She looked at the box with the hunger of a shark sensing blood in the water. "For me?" she asked, her voice feigning innocence, though her fingers were already clawing at the tape. "Open it, sweetheart," my mother urged from her seat across the table. Her eyes were bright, focused entirely on Sloane. Sloane tore the paper. She didn't bother with the card. She didn't even read the name that was written on it. My name. She ripped the silver wrapping apart, balling it up and tossing it onto the floor. She lifted the lid of the box. Her scream pierced the air. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated entitlement. She reached into the box and pulled out a key fob. It was heavy, black, with a silver Honda logo gleaming in the center. Attached to it was a plastic tag from the dealership down on Manchester Road. "No way," Sloane gasped, clutching the keys to her chest. "The CRV? The one we saw last week?" "Brand new," my father beamed, looking more proud than I had ever seen him at any of my graduations. "Lease is paid up for 24 months. Insurance too." "Oh my God!" Sloane jumped up and threw her arms around Dad's neck. "Daddy, you are the best. This is amazing." The room applauded. My cousins clapped. My aunts cooed about what a wonderful father Grant was. I sat there, staring at the empty box on Sloane's lap. The card had fallen off during her frenzy. It lay face up on the table, right next to the bowl of potato salad, to Gabriella. I felt a touch on my arm. I turned my head slowly, my neck feeling stiff, like a rusty hinge. My mother was leaning in. She had a soft, pitying smile on her face, the kind you give to a child who has skinned their knee. "Honey," she said softly, using a term of endearment that suddenly sounded like a curse. "Don't look so sour. You have a car. A nice car. You make good money at that fancy job of yours." "It has my name on it," I said. My voice was quiet, barely audible over the noise of Sloane shrieking about heated seats. "The card. It says, 'To Gabriella.'" My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, stop it. We bought the card and the box before we decided to switch it up. It is just paper. Gabriella, your sister has been having such a hard time with that old Ford. She needs this. You know she needs this more than you do." She squeezed my arm, her fingernails digging slightly into my skin. "You are the strong one. You are the capable one. Be happy for her. Be happy for her." I looked at Sloane. She was 30 years old. She had quit 3 jobs in the last 18 months because she felt the managers did not respect her creativity. She was currently living rent-free in my parents' basement. And now, she was dangling the keys to a brand-new SUV that had been presented in a box with my name on it, at a party that was supposedly for me. The humiliation was not hot. It was not a fiery explosion of rage. It was cold. It started in my stomach and spread out to my fingertips, numbing me. They had not just given her a car. They had staged a performance. They had used my birthday as a prop to highlight their benevolence towards Sloane. They had invited an audience to watch them strip me of a gift and hand it to the golden child, and they expected me to applaud. I looked around the table. I looked at the faces of my family. Not a single person looked uncomfortable. Not one person thought this was strange. In their minds, this was the natural order of the world. Gabriella gives, Sloane takes, Grant and Mom facilitate the transaction and call it love. You are right, I said. I forced the corners of my mouth up. I accessed the part of my brain that I used during hostile board meetings. I engaged the autopilot. She needs it more, I repeated, louder this time so my mother could hear. My mother patted my arm again, satisfied. I knew you would understand. You are always so sensible. Sloane was now showing the keys to Uncle Mike, bragging about the remote start feature. I can warm it up from inside the house, she squealed. Happy birthday. Sloane, I whispered to no one. I reached for my glass of iced tea and took a long drink. The ice had melted, and it was watery and bland. I swallowed it down, washing away the bile that was rising in my throat. They thought the transaction was over. Dad had given the gift. Sloane had received the reward. Mom had managed the emotions. The scene was complete. But they had missed a variable. They had forgotten that I was a project manager. I managed risks. I managed budgets. And I managed resources. As I watched Sloane dance around the room with those keys, I realized something with absolute clarity. I was a resource, and I was currently allocated to a project that was failing. It was time to reallocate. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from my banking app, reminding me of a scheduled transfer set for tomorrow, $500 for my parents' utility supplement. I looked at my father, who was laughing at something Sloane said, his face red and joyous. I looked at the card on the table. To Gabriella. I smiled, and this time, it reached my eyes, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just the girl who understood. I was the girl who was done. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I need to use the restroom. Hurry back, Mom called out, already turning her attention to the cake. We are going to cut the cake soon. I wouldn't miss it, I said. I walked out of the dining room, past the silver wrapping paper on the floor, and into the hallway. The silence of the corridor was heavy. I could still hear the laughter from the other room, but it sounded distant now, like it was coming from a television set in another house. I walked into the bathroom and locked the door. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same as I had 10 minutes ago. Dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, sensible blouse, tired eyes, but the person behind the eyes had changed. The structural beam had finally snapped, and the house was going to come down. I just had to decide which wall to knock out first. I walked back into the dining room, and the atmosphere had shifted. The sharp, frantic energy of the gift opening had settled into a warm, self-satisfied hum. My family was eating cake. It was a vanilla sheet cake from the grocery store, the kind with the frosting that leaves a waxy film on the roof of your mouth. My mother had already cut a slice for me and placed it at my empty seat. It sat there, a square of dry sponge and blue sugar roses, waiting for the guest of honor to return and perform gratitude. My father was standing near the sliding glass door that led to the patio, holding a paper plate in one hand and a plastic fork in the other. When he saw me, he waved me over. It was a gesture of inclusion, or perhaps a summons. I walked toward him, my heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. Every step felt heavy, as if gravity had increased specifically in my vicinity. There she is, he said, swallowing a mouthful of cake. He clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. You handled that beautifully, Gab. Really, I told your mother not to worry. I said, Gabby will understand. Gabby always understands. There it was, the phrase, the golden ticket that my parents had been punching for 3 decades. You have always been the mature one, he continued, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial rumble. Even when you were a little kid, you just got it, you know? He looked at me with eyes that were misty with affection, or maybe just the scotch. He truly believed he was paying me a compliment. He thought he was praising my character, but standing there, smelling the sugar and the liquor on his breath, I did not feel praised. I felt erased. That word, mature, was not an adjective in this house. It was a weapon. It was the brick wall they had built around me to keep me from asking for anything. The sound of his voice triggered a slide projector in my brain, clicking through snapshots of a history I had tried to ignore. I was 8 years old. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a permission slip for a field trip to the science center. It cost $15. My mother was on the phone, arguing with the bank about an overdraft fee, while Sloane, who was 6, was screaming on the floor because she had lost her favorite plastic tiara. I had looked at my mother's stressed face, looked at Sloane's red, blotchy face, and I had quietly folded the permission slip and put it in the trash. I never asked for the money. When the teacher asked why I wasn't going, I told her I didn't like science. That evening, my mother found the slip in the bin. She didn't offer to pay for it. She hugged me and said, "Thank you for being so easy, Gabby. You are such a big girl." Click. I was 16. I had just gotten my driver's license. I had saved $2,000 from babysitting to buy a beat-up sedan from a neighbor. The day I was supposed to hand over the cash, Sloane got caught shoplifting makeup from the mall. The fine and the legal fees to keep it off her record came to exactly $2,000. My parents didn't even have to ask. They just sat me down at this same dining room table. They looked sad. They looked tired. "Sloane made a mistake," my dad had said. "She is not like you, Gabby. She doesn't think ahead. We need to help her." I gave them the money. I took the bus for another 2 years. They told me I was the rock of the family. Click. I was 22, graduating college. I had worked 2 jobs to pay my tuition so they could focus their resources on Sloane, who had decided to go to an expensive private art school she eventually dropped out of. At my graduation dinner, they forgot to make a reservation. We ended up getting drive-through burgers. Sloane complained that her fries were cold. My dad turned to me in the front seat and said, "I am sorry, honey, but hey, at least we are together. You don't need all that fancy pomp and circumstance, right? You know what matters." I had nodded. I always nodded. "You are listening, aren't you?" My father's voice brought me back to the present. He was looking at me expectantly. "I am listening, Dad," I said. My voice was steady. It was a miracle of engineering. "I just wanted to say," he leaned in, "that seeing you give that up for your sister, it makes me proud. Sloane is having a rough year. She needs a win. You are set. You have your life together. You don't need a Honda to know we love you." He squeezed my shoulder one last time and wandered off to get more cake. I stood by the glass door, watching my reflection in the dark pane. You don't need, that was the crux of it. In their eyes, my stability was a natural resource, infinite and self-sustaining. They didn't see the late nights I spent working to get promoted. They didn't see the anxiety attacks I breathed through in bathroom stalls. They didn't see the budget spreadsheets I obsessed over so I would never have to ask anyone for a dime. They saw the result, a daughter who required zero maintenance, and they assumed it was easy. They assumed it was my nature, not my survival mechanism. Because I was strong. I did not need protection, because I was capable. I did not need gifts, because I was mature. I did not need fairness. "Hey?" I turned. Sloane was standing there. She was clutching the key fob in one hand and a fork in the other. She had the grace to look slightly sheepish, but the excitement was vibrating off her like heat waves. "I just wanted to say thanks," she said, taking a bite of cake. "I mean, seriously, this is huge. My car was literally about to die. The transmission was making this grinding noise like you wouldn't believe." "I am sure it was," I said. "Dad said you were cool with it," she said, searching my face. "I mean, if you really wanted it, I guess we could talk about it? But you have that nice sedan, and you live in the city. You probably take Uber everywhere anyway, right?" She was doing it. She was rationalizing the theft in real time. She wanted me to absolve her. She wanted me to say the words that would wash away the tiny speck of guilt she felt, so she could fully enjoy her prize. "It is fine, Sloane," I said. "Enjoy the car." "You are the best," she squealed, and she leaned in to hug me. I let her. I stood stiffly as her arms went around me. She smelled of vanilla frosting and expensive perfume I knew for a fact she had charged to my mother's credit card. Over her shoulder, I saw my mother across the room. She was laughing at something Uncle Mike was saying. She looked happy. The tension that usually lined her forehead whenever Sloane was in a crisis had vanished. The problem was solved. The squeaky wheel had been greased, and the grease was my birthday present. Sloane pulled back, beaming. "I am going to take a picture of it for Instagram. You should come outside." "In a minute," I said. She bounced away, the keys jingling in her hand. I watched her go. A strange sensation washed over me. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was a profound, icy realization. For years, I had told myself that my parents relied on me because they respected me. I thought my role as the good daughter was a badge of honor. I thought that if I just kept being perfect, kept being low maintenance, kept fixing things, eventually they would look at me and say, "Wow, look at what Gabriella has done. Let's reward her." But that was never going to happen. They didn't rely on me because they respected me. They relied on me because I was convenient. I was the path of least resistance. If they took from Sloane, there would be a tantrum, a crisis, a scene. If they took from me, there would be a smile and a nod, and a quiet acceptance. I wasn't their child. I was their insurance policy. I was the buffer they used to soften the blows of Sloane's chaotic life. My throat felt tight, as if a hand were squeezing my windpipe. I took a sip of the lukewarm water in my cup, but it didn't help. I looked at the crowd of people. My blood, my kin, they were all smiling. They were all comfortable, and they were comfortable because they knew, implicitly, that Gabriella would handle it. Gabriella wouldn't make a scene. Gabriella would eat her dry cake and go home and go to work and keep the checks coming. I was not just being ignored, I was being consumed. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Another automated alert. Payment scheduled. Mom and Dad. Insurance premium. $150. I looked at the notification. Then I looked at the empty silver box that had been kicked under the table. The mature thing to do would be to stay, to smile, to go outside and admire the car, to drive home and let this become just another click in the slide projector of resentments. But the thing about structural beams is that they don't bend forever. Eventually, if you pile enough weight on them, they don't just crack, they shatter. I set my paper plate down on the sideboard. The cake was untouched. "I am the one who understands," I whispered to myself. And for the first time, I did. I understood everything. I understood that my compliance was not purchasing their love. It was purchasing their indifference. I turned away from the sliding glass door. I didn't go outside to look at the car. I walked toward the hallway where I had left my purse. The smile I had plastered on my face was gone, and I didn't bother to replace it. The muscles in my jaw ached from years of clenching them shut, but as I reached for my bag, I felt them loosen. I was done being the mature one. It was time to see how they handled a little bit of chaos. I did not slam the car door. I did not peel out of the driveway with tires screeching, leaving a cloud of smoke to mark my exit. That would have been dramatic. And drama was Sloane's department. I simply reversed my rental car out of my parents' driveway, shifted into drive, and navigated the suburban streets until I hit the on-ramp for the interstate. The silence inside the vehicle was absolute. I turned off the radio. I did not want music. I did not want a podcast. I needed the hum of the engine and the white noise of tires on asphalt to drown out the screaming in my head. My destination was the hotel downtown where I had booked a room for the weekend, refusing my mother's offer to sleep on the pull-out couch in the den. Thank God for that small mercy. But as I merged into the center lane, watching the St. Louis skyline approach in the distance, my mind was not on the road. It was drifting back through a timeline, not a timeline of memories, but a timeline of transactions. I am a project manager. I live in data. I track variances. I analyze burn rates. And for the first time, I turned that cold though professional lens on my own personal finances. I started doing the math. It began with the small things, as these things always do. 5 years ago, my father had called me. His voice had been tight, stressed. The business was having a slow quarter. He just needed a little bridge to get to the next contract payment. Could I help? He did not say borrow. He did not say loan. He said help. It was $2,000. I transferred it within the hour. He thanked me profusely. He called me his lifesaver. He never paid it back. 3 months later, the water heater in the house died. Mom called, crying. Sloan was living there at the time, between boyfriends, and she could not take a cold shower. They were a little short until the first of the month. I sent $1,200 for a new unit and installation. I told myself I was paying for my parents' comfort. I ignored the fact that Sloan posted a picture of herself at a concert in Nashville 3 days later, a trip that surely cost more than a few $100s. As the miles rolled by under my wheels, the mental ledger grew longer and darker. There was the roof repair, $4,000. There was the time Mom needed a root canal and their dental insurance had lapsed, $1,500. There was the winter the heating bills spiked and they were afraid the gas would be shut off, $600. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I had justified every single one of those transfers. I told myself that I was successful. I was single. I had disposable income. It was my duty as the child who made it to reach back and pull the others up. That is what families do, right? They support each other. But as I stared at the red taillights of the semi-truck in front of me, the word support tasted like ash in my mouth. Support is a structure that holds something up so it can stand on its own. I was not a support. I was a crutch. No, I was worse than a crutch. I was a conveyor belt of cash that allowed them to live beyond their means without ever feeling the friction of reality. And then there was Sloan. My sister, the artist. My sister, the dreamer. My sister, the professional victim of circumstances. I thought about her employment history. In the last 3 years alone, she had held 6 different jobs. She was a receptionist, but her boss was mean. She was a floral assistant, but the pollen gave her allergies. She was a social media manager for a local boutique, but they did not understand her vision. Every time she quit, or was let go due to creative differences, there was a gap in rent, a gap in car payments, a gap in cell phone bills. And who filled the gap? Gabriella, your sister is in a tough spot, Mom would whisper over the phone. She just needs a month to get back on her feet. We would help her, but you know how tight things are right now. So I would open my app, I would type in the numbers, 500 here, 800 there. I set up a recurring transfer of $300 a month to my parents' joint account 2 years ago because they claimed inflation was eating into their grocery budget. I called it the pantry fund. I set it to indefinite. I never canceled it. That was $300 leaving my account on the first of every month, like a subscription service for parental approval. $3,600 a year for groceries, while my father drank scotch that cost $60 a bottle and my sister drove a car with heated seats. I pulled the car off the highway. I could not drive anymore. My vision was getting blurry, not from tears, but from a sheer, overwhelming rage that was making my head spin. I turned into the parking lot of a 24-hour pharmacy and put the car in park. I sat there for a moment in the neon glow of the store sign. Then, I pulled my phone out of my purse. I needed to see it. I needed to see the blood and guts of the murder scene. I opened my banking application. Face ID unlocked it instantly. I navigated to the search bar in my transaction history. I typed in Mom. The screen populated. It was a long list of red numbers. -500, -300, -1,000. I deleted Mom and typed Sloan. Zelle transfer. Rent help. -800. Zelle transfer. Car repair. -400. Zelle transfer. Happy birthday. -200. I scrolled back and back and back. The sheer volume of it was nauseating. It was not just the large sums, it was the frequency. It was the drip, drip, drip of my life energy being siphoned off into their accounts. I saw transfers for emergency travel when Aunt Linda got sick. I saw transfers for vet bills, for a dog they adopted without asking if they could afford it. I tapped on the recurring transfers tab. There it was, active, mom and dad support, $300, frequency, monthly, next transfer date, tomorrow. Tomorrow. I laughed. It was a dry hacking sound in the quiet car. Tomorrow. The bank was going to take $300 of the money I earned by waking up at 5 in the morning and dealing with client crises until 8 at night. And it was going to send it to the people who had just humiliated me in front of 20 relatives. They did not call it a loan because loans imply an intent to repay. They called it help because help is a bottomless pit. Help is a moral imperative. If you refuse a loan, you are prudent. If you refuse help, you are cruel. They had weaponized my own conscience against me. I looked at the total at the bottom of the screen. I did a rough calculation in my head of the last 12 months alone. It was over $12,000. $12,000. That was a down payment on a house. That was a trip to Europe. That was my retirement fund compounding interest. But more than the money, what sickened me was the realization of what that money actually represented. It was hush money. It was the fee I paid to be left alone. I paid them so they would not guilt me. I paid them so they would tell me I was the good daughter. I paid them so I could feel absolved of the sin of being successful while they struggled. But were they struggling? I thought about the box, the silver wrapping paper, the brand new Honda CR-V key fob. You do not lease a brand new SUV if you are struggling. You do not throw a catered party with roast beef and premium alcohol if you are struggling. They were not poor. They were just using my money to subsidize their luxuries while I lived like a monk to keep the surplus flowing. I drove a 4-year-old sedan. I brought my lunch to work. I shopped the sales. I did these things because I thought I had to be responsible. I thought the family needed a safety net. I was not the safety net. I was the ATM. I looked at the phone screen again. The list of recipients was short. Mom, Dad, Sloan. It was a closed loop of parasitism. I felt a wave of physical disgust roll over me. It was not just anger at them. It was a deep, recoiling horror at myself. I had let this happen. I had trained them to treat me this way. I had signed every check. I had authorized every transfer. I had nodded and smiled and said, "Of course, whatever you need," because I was so desperate to be useful. I thought being useful was the same thing as being loved. But utility is not love. You do not love a toaster. You do not love a generator. You use them until they break, and then you replace them. Tonight, they had tried to replace me. They had taken the one thing that was supposed to be mine, my birthday, my gift, and they had reallocated it to the prettier, shinier model. I stared at the cancel button next to the recurring transfer. My thumb hovered over the glass. For 31 years, I had been afraid of that button. I had been afraid of the phone call that would follow. "Gabriella, what happened? The money didn't come through. Are you okay? Did you forget us?" I was not afraid anymore. The fear had burned up in the dining room, incinerated by the laughter of my family as my sister dangled those keys. I did not just feel angry, I felt powerful. I tapped the line item for the recurring transfer. The details opened up. Modify or cancel. I did not hesitate. I did not tremble. I tapped Cancel Series. A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer?" "Yes," I said aloud to the empty car. "I am sure." I confirmed it. The line item vanished from the screen. But I was not done. I went to my saved payees list. There was Mom S. checking account. There was Dad S. savings. There was Sloan's Venmo link. I selected Mom. Delete payee. Confirm. I selected Dad. Delete payee. Confirm. I selected Sloan. Delete payee. Confirm. The screen refreshed. The list was empty. I sat back against the headrest and exhaled. The air leaving my lungs felt different. It felt lighter. I was no longer the family bank. The branch was closed, the vault was locked, and the combination had just been changed. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the parking spot. I still had a drive ahead of me to the hotel, but for the first time in my life, the road didn't feel like a path back to an obligation. It felt like an exit ramp. I had one more stop to make in my digital life, one more transaction to process, but this one wouldn't be a transfer, it would be a refund, and it was going to hurt them a lot more than a missed grocery payment. The hotel room was standard corporate beige. It smelled of industrial cleaner and air conditioning coolant, a sterile scent that was a welcome relief from the cloying vanilla and roast beef atmosphere of my parents' house. I threw my purse onto the bed and kicked off my heels. My feet ached, my head ached, but my heart was pounding with a strange, cold rhythm. I had already cut off the financial drip feed. That was step one. That was the reactive measure. But there was something else. There was a landmine sitting in my bag that no one knew about. I walked over to my purse and reached into the back pocket. My fingers closed around a thick manila envelope. I pulled it out and sat down at the small desk in the corner of the room. I placed the envelope on the glass surface and stared at it. Inside this envelope was the reason I had been driving a 4-year-old car. Inside this envelope was the reason I had skipped my own vacation last summer. Inside this envelope was the grand finale I had planned for tonight. I slid the contents out. It was a glossy, spiraled itinerary from a luxury travel agency. The cover featured a breathtaking photo of a cruise ship navigating through a fjord, with blue-white glaciers rising on either side and a humpback whale breaching in the foreground. The Grand Alaskan Voyage. 7 days. Balcony suite. All-inclusive. My mother had been talking about Alaska since I was 12 years old. It was her bucket list item. She watched documentaries about the Iditarod. She had a calendar of Alaskan landscapes hanging in the kitchen. Every time a commercial for a cruise line came on television, she would sigh that heavy, dramatic sigh of hers and say, "One day, maybe one day before I die, I will see a glacier." My father always shot it down. He said it was too expensive. He said he did not like the cold. He said they could not afford to take the time off. So, being the good daughter, I decided I would make it happen. I had spent 14 months saving for this. I did not just set aside spare change. I aggressively diverted funds. I took on freelance consulting gigs on the weekends. I ate meal-prepped lunches instead of ordering out with my team. I skipped the wedding of a college friend in Mexico because the flight would have eaten into the Alaska fund. I wanted it to be perfect. I booked the suite with the private veranda so Mom could drink her morning coffee while watching the icebergs. I prepaid for the helicopter excursion to the Mendenhall Glacier. I bought the premium drink package for Dad so he could have his scotch without looking at a bill. The total cost was $8,450. I ran my hand over the glossy paper. I had imagined the moment of giving this to them 1,000 times. I had played it out in my head like a movie scene. I would wait until the end of my birthday party. After the cake, after the presents, I would hand them this envelope. Mom would open it. She would scream. She would cry. Dad would look at me with actual respect. They would hug me, and for once, I would not be the invisible ATM. I would be the hero. I had brought this envelope into the house with me today. It had been sitting in my bag, right next to my feet, while my father handed my birthday gift to Sloane. I laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound in the empty room. I had been sitting there, holding a nearly $10,000 dream vacation for them, while they stripped me of a lease I did not even want just to keep my sister happy. The contrast was so violent it made me dizzy. I was planning to send them to paradise. They were planning to send me the bill for Sloane's existence. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the dark room. I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi and opened my email. I searched for the confirmation from the travel agency. There it was. Booking reference, 88429BJ. I clicked on it. The details populated the screen. Guest 1, Grant Richards. Guest 2, Marie Richards. Primary account holder, Gabriella Richards. Status, confirmed. Fully paid. I stared at their names. Grant and Marie, the people who had laughed when the room laughed, the people who had told me I was mature enough to be robbed. If I had given them this envelope tonight, what would have happened? They would have been thrilled. Certainly. Mom would have wept. But would it have changed anything? No. They would have gone on the trip. They would have posted photos on Facebook captioned, "Living the Dream." They would have bragged to their friends about how well they raised their daughters. And when they came back, they would have called me the next time Sloan needed rent money. The trip would not have been a gift. It would have been a tribute. It would have been an offering to gods who did not believe in blessing me, only in taking from me. I scrolled down to the fine print at the bottom of the email. I am a project manager. I manage risk. When I booked this trip 6 months ago, I had hesitated at the checkout screen. It was a lot of money. The non-refundable fare was cheaper. It would have saved me about $600. But my instincts, honed by years of corporate disaster management, had kicked in. What if Mom gets sick? What if Dad has a work crisis? What if something happens? So I had paid the extra $600 for the Platinum Protection Plan. I clicked the link to the policy document. Cancellation policy. Guests may cancel for any reason up to 48 hours prior to departure for a 100% refund to the original form of payment. I checked the date on the itinerary. The ship set sail in 3 weeks. I was well within the window. My heart began to race, not with fear, but with adrenaline. This was not $300 a month. This was not a utility bill. This was a massive lump sum injection of capital that I was about to rip away from them. This was the dream. I held the power to destroy the dream. I navigated to the travel agency's website. I logged in. My dashboard appeared. There was the countdown clock. 21 days until your Alaskan adventure. There was a button on the right side of the screen. A simple, gray button. Manage booking. I clicked it. A new menu appeared. Modify guests. Upgrade cabin. Add excursions. Cancel booking. I moved the cursor over cancel booking. My hand froze. The conditioning ran deep, a voice in the back of my head, sounding suspiciously like my mother, started to whisper, "You cannot do this. It is cruel. They are your parents. They gave you life. Mom has wanted this forever. You are doing this out of spite. Be the bigger person. Be the mature one." I closed my eyes. I thought about the silver box. I thought about the moment Sloan tore the paper. I thought about the look on my father's face, that challenge, that dare, when he said the gift was more suitable for her. I thought about the fact that they had not even bought me a backup gift. There was nothing else, just the stolen box and a slice of dry cake. If I was the mature one, then I should make a mature financial decision. And investing $8,000 in a relationship that provided zero return on investment was bad business. I opened my eyes. I was not doing this out of spite. I was doing this out of self-respect. I clicked cancel booking. A pop-up window appeared. Are you sure? This action cannot be undone. Your reservation will be released immediately. I did not look away. I did not flinch. I moved the cursor to yes. Cancel my reservation. I clicked. The screen loaded for a second. The little circle spun round and round. Then, the page refreshed. Your booking has been successfully canceled. A refund of $8,450 will be credited to your visa ending in 4092 within 7 to 10 business days. It was gone. The balcony suite, the glaciers, the whales, the all-inclusive drinks. Vaporized. I sat back in the chair and let out a long, shuddering breath. I waited for the guilt to hit me. I waited for the crushing weight of regret. But it did not come. Instead, I felt a strange lightness in my chest. It was the feeling of dropping a heavy backpack after a 10-mile hike. I looked at the manila envelope on the desk. It was just paper now. It was trash. I picked it up. I walked over to the metal wastebasket by the desk. I did not tear it up. I did not need to be dramatic. I just dropped it in. It landed with a soft thud. I turned back to the laptop. I had the money coming back. $8,000. I could put it into my retirement fund. I could invest it. Or I thought about the travel brochure. I thought about the glaciers. I had never really cared about Alaska. I hate the cold. But I had always wanted to go to Italy. I opened a new tab. I typed into the search bar, Luxury Amalfi Coast Villas. I was not just canceling their joy, I was reclaiming my own. But before I could start dreaming about pasta and lemon groves, my phone lit up on the bed. It buzzed aggressively against the duvet. I walked over and looked at the screen. Mom calling. I stared at the name. I had deleted her from my banking app, but not from my contacts. Not yet. She was calling, probably to ask if I had made it to the hotel, or maybe to ask why I left so abruptly, or maybe, just maybe, to ask if I could transfer $50 for pizza because they were all still partying and didn't want to cook. I silenced the ringer. I flipped the phone face down. I was not ready to talk to them, not because I was afraid, but because I had one more layer to peel back. I had cut the cash flow. I had canceled the cruise. But there was still the matter of the car, the Honda CR-V. My father had said the lease was in my name originally. He said they switched it up, but legal documents are not like birthday cards. You cannot just cross out a name and write in a new one with a Sharpie. If that car was supposed to be for me, then my name was on the paperwork somewhere. And if my name was on the paperwork, and Sloan was driving it, a cold chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the hotel air conditioning. I went back to my laptop. I needed to check my credit report. If they had simply swapped the gift, that was one thing. That was emotional abuse. But if they had used my credit to secure that lease for Sloan because her credit score was hovering somewhere in the triple digits, that was not just mean. That was fraud. I typed annual credit report into the browser. I cracked my knuckles. The mature daughter was about to become the litigious daughter. The laptop screen blinked, a harsh white rectangle in the dim hotel room. I sat there, staring at the inbox where the new message had just landed. It was a generic automated email, devoid of emotion, generated by a server farm somewhere in the Midwest. Subject: Cancellation confirmation. Booking reference: 88429 to BJ. I opened it. The text was short. It stated that my request had been processed. It stated that the full amount of $8,450 would be returned to my card within 7 business days. There were no questions asked, no guilt trips, no passive-aggressive comments about how much I had disappointed the cruise line, just a transaction, a clean, reversible binary code. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. It came out as a long, shaky exhale that seemed to deflate my entire posture. I slumped back into the stiff, ergonomic chair. It was done. The Alaska dream, the glaciers, the whales, the balcony suite where my mother would have sipped her coffee while pretending she had not just fleeced her daughter for rent money, was gone. It had been dismantled with a single click. I tabbed over to my banking window. I had already deleted the payees. I had already canceled the recurring transfer, but I needed to see the proof. I needed the digital paper trail that confirmed I was no longer a tributary flowing into the ocean of their mismanagement. There it was, in the Scheduled Activity tab. Status: canceled. Next transfer: none. Beneficiary: deleted. I stared at the word none. It was the most beautiful word I had ever read. It was a zero, a null set, a vacuum where a burden used to be. For the first time in a decade, my financial future belonged to me. The $300 that was supposed to leave my account tomorrow would stay there. It would sit in my balance, quiet and obedient, waiting for my instructions. It would not go to a liquor store. It would not go to a boutique. It would not go to cover a mistake my sister made. My phone was still lying face down on the bed where I had left it. It had been vibrating intermittently against the duvet, a dull, angry buzz that sounded like a trapped insect. I stood up and walked over to it. I picked it up. The lock screen was a cascade of notifications. Missed call, Mom, 4. Missed call, Dad, 2. Text message, Sloan. Are you okay? Mom is freaking out. Text message, Mom. Gabriella. Pick up the phone. This is rude. Text message, Dad. We need to talk, now. They had not even noticed the money was gone yet. They were just reacting to my physical absence. They were reacting to the fact that the prop had walked off the stage in the middle of the play. I looked at the names: Mom, Dad, Sloan. For years, they had been at the top of my favorites list. They were the people who could bypass my do not disturb settings. They were the people for whom I would wake up at 2 in the morning if the phone rang. I unlocked the phone. I went to my contacts. I tapped the star icon next to my mother's name. The yellow star turned white. I tapped the star icon next to my father's name. White. I tapped the star icon next to Sloan. White. I removed them from the emergency bypass list. Then, I did something I had never done before. I did not just silence the phone. I did not just flip it over. I held down the power button on the side of the device. Slide to power off. I slid my thumb across the glass. The screen went black. The little spinning wheel appeared for a second, and then it vanished. The device in my hand was now just a brick of glass and metal. It could not ring. It could not buzz. It could not deliver their demands, their guilt, or their manufactured emergencies into my sanctuary. I placed the dead phone on the nightstand. The room was silent, absolutely, perfectly silent. I walked into the bathroom. I stripped off the clothes I had worn to the party, the sensible blouse, the slacks, the blazer. I bundled them up and shoved them into the bottom of my suitcase. I did not want to look at them. They smelled like the party. They smelled like the person I used to be. I turned on the shower. I made the water hot. I stood under the spray for a long time, letting the heat hammer against my shoulders where the tension had knotted the muscles into tight cords. I scrubbed my skin. I washed my hair. I wanted to wash off every trace of the day. I wanted to wash off the feeling of the silver wrapping paper crumbling in my hands. I wanted to wash off the memory of my father's voice calling me mature. When I stepped out, the mirror was fogged with steam. I wiped a circle in the glass with my hand and looked at myself. I looked tired. My eyes were rimmed with red. My skin was pale, but the panic was gone. The frantic, desperate need to fix things was gone. I wrapped myself in the white hotel robe and walked back into the bedroom. I climbed into the bed. The sheets were cool and crisp. The mattress was firm. Usually, when I slept at my parents' house, or even when I slept at my own apartment after a family gathering, my brain would be racing. I would be running simulations. Did I say the right thing? Is Mom mad? Did Sloan seem off? Do I need to send more money next week? I would sleep in fits and starts, waking up every hour to check my phone, terrified of the crisis that was always just one ringtone away. But tonight, there was nothing to check. The phone was off. The money was safe. The trip was canceled. I lay on my back and stared at the dark ceiling. I thought about the Honda CR-V. I thought about the credit report I had started to pull up before I closed the laptop. I knew what I was going to find. The hard inquiry I had glimpsed on the summary page was enough to confirm it. Honda Financial Services. It was there. But I did not need to fight that battle tonight. The evidence was not going anywhere. The law was on my side. The click had already happened. I had severed the connection. I rolled onto my side and pulled the duvet up to my chin. For the first time in my life, I was not Gabriella the fixer. I was not Gabriella the ATM. I was not Gabriella the safety net. I was just Gabriella, and I was alone. And it was not lonely. It was glorious. It felt like space. It felt like oxygen. It felt like the moment after a fever breaks, when your skin cools down and the delirium fades, and you realize you are going to survive. I closed my eyes. There was no urgent. There was no emergency. There was just the hum of the air conditioner and the steady rhythm of my own heart, beating for no one but me. I fell asleep within minutes, and for the first time in 31 years, I did not dream about drowning. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains, a bright, aggressive glare that felt completely at odds with the storm I knew was waiting for me. I stretched, feeling the unfamiliar luxury of a full 8 hours of sleep. For a few minutes, I just lay there, enjoying the silence. I was not rushing to check my email. I was not mentally balancing my checkbook. I was just breathing. Then, I reached for my phone. I held the power button. The screen flared to life, the Apple logo appearing white against the black background. It took a moment to boot up, and then, the floodgates opened. The phone vibrated in my hand so violently it almost felt hot. The notifications cascaded down the screen in a blur of banners, stacking on top of each other until the timestamp was the only thing distinguishing one frantic message from the next. 52 missed calls, 87 text messages, 3 voicemails. I sat up, propping pillows behind my back, and began to scroll. The progression of the messages was a fascinating case study in panic. 8 a.m. Mom, good morning, honey. Let me know when you are coming by for brunch. 9:15 a.m. Mom, Gabriella? The bank just sent a notice. The transfer did not go through. Did you change cards? 9:30 a.m. Mom, call me immediately. 9:45 a.m. Dad, pick up the phone. Gabriella. 10:00 a.m. Sloan, why is Mom crying? What did you do? And then, the tone shifted. The timestamp was 10:15 in the morning. That must have been when the automated system at the travel agency processed the cancellation and sent the courtesy email to the listed guests. 10:17 a.m. Mom, Alaska? We got an email about Alaska. What is this? 10:18 a.m. Mom, it says canceled. Gabriella, please tell me this is a mistake. 10:20 a.m. Dad, you are a spiteful little girl. 10:25 a.m. Aunt Linda, your mother is distraught. I do not know what is going on, but you need to fix this. Family does not treat family this way. I read Aunt Linda's message twice. Aunt Linda, who had not called me on my birthday in 5 years, but had no problem eating the roast beef I paid for. The phone rang in my hand. It was my father. I stared at the screen. Yesterday, my heart would have been hammering against my ribs. I would have been rehearsing apologies. I would have been terrified. Today, I just felt a cold, sharp clarity. I slid my thumb across the screen. Hello, I said. You, my father's voice was a low growl, are a piece of work. He did not say hello. He did not ask how I was. He launched straight into the attack. Grant, give me the phone. I heard my mother screaming in the background. There was a scuffle, and then her voice pierced my ear. She sounded hysterical, breathless. Gabriella, we got an email from Norwegian Cruise Line. It said Grand Alaskan Voyage. It said guest Grant Richards and guest Marie Richards. It said it was fully paid. It was, I said calmly. Was, she shrieked. It says canceled. It says refund processed. Gabriella, what did you do? Was this a surprise? Were you surprising us? Yes, I said. It was a surprise. It was my gift to you. I saved for 14 months to buy it. Oh my God, she sobbed. Oh my God. Grant, she got us the cruise. She got us the balcony suite. Then her voice sharpened, turning from wonder to accusation in a split second. Then why did you cancel it? Fix it. Call them back right now and tell them it was a mistake. It was not a mistake, I said. My voice was steady, contrasting the chaos on the other end. I canceled it last night. Why? The word was a wail. Why would you do that to us? Because you made it very clear last night that you do not value my gifts, I said. You took the gift I brought, gave it to Sloan, and laughed about it. I realized that if I gave you this trip, you would probably just find a way to give it to her too. Maybe you would trade the tickets for cash to pay off her credit cards. I decided to remove the temptation. That is different, my father roared. He must have been leaning over Mom's shoulder. The car was different. Sloan needed the car. We are talking about a once-in-a-lifetime trip here. Gabriella, you are punishing us because you are jealous. I am not jealous, I said. And I am not punishing you. I am simply managing my finances. I canceled a luxury expenditure that I could no longer justify. That is what mature people do, right, Dad? They make hard choices. You are selfish, he spat. You have always been cold. But this, dangling this in front of our faces and snatching it away, that is cruel. That is evil. I did not dangle it, I corrected him. You were never supposed to know about it. You only found out because the system sent you an email when I took my money back. If you had just accepted the box I gave you last night with some grace, you would be packing for Juneau right now. There was a silence on the line. It was the silence of people realizing exactly how expensive their cruelty had just been. You have to rebook it. Sloane's voice came through now. She was obviously on speakerphone. Gabby, seriously, Mom is hyperventilating. You cannot just do this. You have the money. You are rich. I am not rich, Sloane, I said. I work. There is a difference. And I am not rebooking it. The money is gone. I am using it for something else. What could be more important than your parents? My mother wept. After everything we have done for you, we raised you, we sacrificed for you. You sacrificed me, I said. What? You sacrificed me, I repeated, to save Sloane, over and over again, and I am done being the sacrifice. This is about the transfer too, isn't it? My father demanded. The $300, you cut that off too. Do you want us to starve? Is that it? You want your mother to beg for grocery money? You will not starve, I said. You have 2 incomes, you have a pension, and you apparently have enough credit to lease a brand new Honda. If you can afford the payments on that car, you can afford your own milk and bread. We cannot afford that car, Sloane yelled. That is why Dad put it in? That is why Dad handled it. She stopped. She caught herself. I narrowed my eyes. The slip was small, but it was significant. What were you going to say, Sloane? I asked. Why did Dad put it in what? Nothing, she snapped. Just fix this. Gabby, everyone thinks you are being a psycho. Aunt Linda says you have lost your mind. Tell Aunt Linda she can pay for your groceries then, I said. You are tearing this family apart, my mother screamed, over a stupid box. You are throwing away 30 years of love over a misunderstanding. It is not a misunderstanding, I said, and it is not love. You are not crying because you miss me. You are crying because the check bounced. How dare you, my father hissed. You come to this house. You come here right now and look me in the eye and say that. Maybe I will, I said. Good, he said. Come here and explain to your mother why you are stealing her dream. I will be there in an hour, I said. But Dad, I am not coming to apologize. I am coming to collect what is mine. I hung up the phone before he could respond. My hand was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying the words I had swallowed for decades. I looked at the black screen of the phone. They still thought this was a negotiation. They thought that if they yelled loud enough, if they guilted me hard enough, I would crack. I would open the banking app, apologize, and wire the funds. They thought I was coming over to be scolded. They had no idea what I was actually bringing to that meeting. I stood up and walked to my suitcase. I pulled out a pair of jeans and a crisp white shirt. I dressed with the precision of a soldier putting on armor. Sloane's slip of the tongue was ringing in my ears. That is why Dad put it in. She had almost said it. She had almost admitted the mechanics of the deception. I grabbed my laptop bag. Inside was the credit report I had printed out at the hotel business center 10 minutes before I turned my phone on. Inside was the evidence of the inquiries, the dates, the signatures that were definitely not mine. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I did not look like the daughter who sat silently at the end of the table anymore. I looked like a project manager who had just identified a critical failure in the system and was arriving to shut the operation down. I picked up my car keys. See you soon, I whispered to the empty room. I walked out the door. The time for texts and emails was over. It was time for a face-to-face audit. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house at exactly 11 o'clock. The Honda CR-V was parked right in the center, blocking the path to the garage, displayed like a trophy. I parked my rental car on the street, leaving a deliberate distance between my temporary vehicle and their stolen prize. Walking up the driveway, I noticed the paper dealer tag on the back of the Honda. It was fluttering in the wind. I didn't look closely at it before, but now, with the eyes of an auditor, I scanned the details. It was standard dealer script, illegible from this distance. I kept walking. The front door was unlocked. It always was, in this family. Boundaries were just suggestions, including physical ones. I stepped into the foyer. The air inside was heavy, thick with the smell of brewing coffee and the palpable tension of a household in crisis. I found them in the kitchen, not the dining room. The dining room was for celebrations. The kitchen was for war councils. My mother was sitting at the round breakfast table, clutching a mug of coffee with both hands, as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the earth. Her eyes were swollen. My father was pacing the linoleum floor, his heavy footsteps measuring the length of the room. Sloane was leaning against the counter, scrolling on her phone, looking bored but guarded. When I walked in, the motion stopped. "You are here," my father said. It wasn't a greeting. It was an acknowledgement of a target acquisition. "I am here," I said. I remained standing near the doorway. I didn't want to sit. Sitting implies staying. "Fix it," my mother croaked. She looked up at me, her face a mask of tragic suffering. "Call the travel agent. Gabriella, tell them it was a misunderstanding. If you call now, maybe we can get the room back. Maybe we don't lose the deposit." "The refund is already processing, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "The room is gone. The trip is over." "How can you be so cold?" she wailed, slamming the mug down. Coffee sloshed onto the table. "I have told everyone. I posted it on Facebook. I told the girls at the bridge club." "Then you will have to tell the girls at the bridge club that you celebrated prematurely," I said. "This is not about the trip," my father cut in. Stepping into my personal space, he was trying to use his size to intimidate me, a tactic that had worked when I was 12. It did not work when I was 31. "This is about respect. You don't pull the rug out from under your family. You don't strip us of resources just to make a point." "Resources," I repeated. "Is that what I am to you? A resource? Like a coal mine you can strip until it is empty?" "Don't get smart with me," he snapped. "We are talking about fairness. You have everything. You have the big job. You have the apartment in the city. Sloane has nothing. She is trying to get her life started. And you are jealous because we gave her a little push?" "A little push?" I looked at Sloane. "You gave her a $35,000 car." Sloane rolled her eyes. "It is a lease, Gabby. God, you are so dramatic. It is not like they bought it cash. The monthly payments are totally manageable." "Manageable for who?" I asked. "Dad just said he's worried about grocery money. So who is managing these payments? Sloane? You? With your part-time job at the boutique?" "I have prospects," Sloane shot back, her defensive reflex kicking in. "And besides, the financing was approved based on the family credit. So it is fine. We got a great tier. The interest rate is practically zero." I froze. My internal radar pinged loud and clear. "Family credit?" I asked softly. "What does that mean?" "Dad's credit score is below 600. I know this because I tried to help him refinance the mortgage last year and the bank laughed at us." The room went very quiet. My father stopped pacing. He looked at the refrigerator. He looked at the floor. He looked anywhere but at me. "We fixed it," my father mumbled. "We have been working on it." "You raised your score 200 points in 6 months?" I asked. "That is impossible." "Well, we had a co-signer," Sloane blurted out. "Sloane!" my father barked, his voice sharp as a whip crack. Sloane jumped, looking confused. "What? She is going to find out anyway when she sees the car insurance." I looked from Sloane to my father. The pieces were not just falling into place. They were slamming together with magnetic force. "A co-signer," I said slowly. "Who co-signed? Dad? Uncle Mike? Aunt Linda?" "It is complicated," my mother sniffled, wiping her nose with a napkin. We needed a little help to secure the rate. The dealer said we needed a strong primary applicant." "A primary applicant," I repeated. I took a step toward the table. My mother's phone was lying face up next to her coffee mug. The screen was dark, but as I moved, a notification lit up the glass. It was a generic alert, probably a news update or a coupon, but it drew my eye to the device. "Who is the primary applicant?" I asked. My voice was no longer flat. It was razor sharp. "It doesn't matter," my father yelled, throwing his hands up. "The point is the car is here, the deal is done, and you are ruining the celebration." "It matters to me," I said. I looked at my mother. "Mom, show me the lease agreement." "I don't have it," she lied. Her eyes darted to her phone. It was a micro-expression, a split-second glance of panic. "You have everything on your phone," I said. "You scan every receipt. You keep every email. Show me the email from the dealership." "Gabriella, stop it," my father shouted. He moved to block me, but he was too slow. My mother's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a news alert. It was an email notification. The banner stayed on the screen for 3 seconds. "Honda Financial Services. Welcome to your new account. Gabriella, set up your..." The breath left my lungs. I didn't lunge. I didn't scream. I simply reached out with a speed that surprised even me and picked up the phone from the table. "Hey!" my mother shrieked. "Give that back." I took 2 steps back, putting the kitchen island between me and my father. I tapped the notification. My mother didn't use a passcode. She said it was too complicated to remember. The email app opened. Subject: Welcome to Honda Financial Services. Dear Gabriella Richards, thank you for choosing Honda. Your first payment of $489 is due on... I scrolled down. There was a PDF attachment titled Lease Agreement Final Signed, PDF. I tapped it. The document loaded. I zoomed in on the signature line at the bottom of the last page. There was a signature. It was a loop, a scrawl that looked vaguely like mine, but the slant was wrong. It was the way someone writes when they are trying to copy a signature from memory. And below it, printed in clear, undeniable block letters, Lessee, Gabriella Richards, Co-lessee, Grant Richards. They hadn't just swapped the gift. They hadn't just given Sloan the car. They had bought the car in my name. "You forged my signature," I whispered. I looked up at them. The phone felt like a burning coal in my hand. "We didn't forge it," my father argued, his face turning a deep, dangerous shade of purple. "I signed as your proxy. We are family. I have power of attorney." "You do not have power of attorney," I said. "And even if you did, that is for medical emergencies, not for leasing SUVs for your unemployed daughter." "We were going to make the payments," Sloan yelled, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "Dad said he would handle the payments. It just needed to be in your name for the approval. It helps your credit score. We were helping you." "Helping me?" I let out a short, hysterical laugh. "You stole my identity. This is fraud. This is a felony." "Oh, stop using big words," my mother cried, standing up. "You are not going to send your father to jail. You are not that heartless. We did what we had to do. Sloan needed a car. You weren't here to sign, so we handled it. It is a formality." I looked at them. They truly believed it. They believed that my identity was community property. They believed that my credit score, which I had built over 10 years of perfect payments and discipline, was a communal pot they could dip into whenever they wanted. I didn't say another word. I held the phone up. I positioned it so the screen was clearly visible. I pulled my own phone out of my pocket, the one I had turned back on in the car. I snapped a picture of the email. I snapped a picture of the PDF signature page. I forwarded the email from my mother's account to my own secure work email address. "What are you doing?" my father demanded, stepping around the island. I hit send. I watched the progress bar complete. I placed my mother's phone back on the counter. I did not throw it. I placed it down gently. "I am leaving," I said. "You are not leaving until we settle this," my father shouted. He looked ready to grab my arm. I turned my head and looked him dead in the eye. "Dad, I have the photos. I have the email. If you touch me, I will call the police right now, and I won't be calling them about a civil dispute." He froze. The threat of real, tangible consequences pierced through his bluster. He saw the look in my eyes. It wasn't the look of a daughter. It was the look of a stranger. "Gabriella, please," my mother sobbed, sinking back into her chair. "Don't be like this. We can work it out. Dad will pay you back. We can write up a contract between us." "We already have a contract," I said, pointing to the phone, "and it is fraudulent." I walked out of the kitchen. I walked down the hallway, past the family photos where a younger version of me smiled blindly next to the sister who would one day drive a stolen car in my name. I opened the front door. The air outside was hot and humid, but it felt clean. "Gabriella!" Sloane screamed from the doorway behind me. "You are ruining everything!" I didn't turn back. I walked to my rental car. I got in. I locked the doors. I looked at the Honda one last time. It wasn't a gift. It was a crime scene evidence locker on wheels. I started the engine. As I pulled away, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel betrayed. Those feelings were too small, too personal. I felt the cold, hard resolve of a prosecutor preparing for trial. They wanted a mature reaction. They were about to get the most mature thing in the world, a lawsuit. Back in the sterile safety of my hotel room, I opened my laptop with the cold precision of a coroner preparing for an autopsy. The drive from my parents' house had been a blur of adrenaline, but now, sitting at the small wooden desk, my heart rate had slowed to a rhythmic, dangerous thud. I had forwarded the email evidence to myself, but now I needed to dissect it. I needed to understand the anatomy of the betrayal. I opened the PDF file titled Lease Agreement Final Signed. The screen filled with the standard legal boilerplate of a vehicle lease. I skipped the clauses about mileage limits and wear and tear fees. I went straight to the dates. My eyes locked on the timestamp in the top right corner of the first page. October 4th. I sat back, feeling a fresh wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the stale hotel coffee. October 4th was 3 weeks ago. My father's performance at the party, the speech, the dramatic pause, the claim that he and Mom had just decided this morning to give the car to Sloane, was not just a lie. It was a scripted scene in a play that had been in production for nearly a month. They had not bought a car for me and then changed their minds. They had never intended that car for me. The gift was a fabrication from start to finish. The box, the silver paper, the card with my name on it. It was all a Trojan horse. They needed a way to present the vehicle to Sloane in front of witnesses, in front of the family, to lock me into a social contract of generosity before I even knew I had signed a financial one. If I had opened that box, what would have happened? I would have seen the keys. I would have been confused. And then, amidst the applause and the cake, my father would have pulled me aside. He would have clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "We needed your credit to get the deal, Gabby, but don't worry, Sloane will make the payments. You are just the name on the paper." And because I was the mature one, because I was the fixer, and because I would have been surrounded by 20 people cheering for my sister, I would have swallowed it. I would have said okay. I would have let the trap snap shut around my ankle because I was too polite to scream. But they had gotten greedy. They wanted the credit for the gift without the awkward conversation. They decided to hand the glory directly to Sloane and leave me with the bill in the mail. I scrolled down to the applicant information section. Name, Gabriella Richards. Social security number, XXXX. Date of birth, June 15th, 1993. Employer, Northbridge Systems. Annual income, $140,000. My stomach twisted. They knew my salary. They knew exactly how much I made. I had never told them the exact figure. I had only said I was doing well. How did they know? Then I remembered, last year, when I was refinancing my student loans, I had faxed a pay stub from my parents' home office machine because my scanner was broken. My mother must have kept a copy. She had filed it away, not as a keepsake, but as ammunition. They had used my income to justify the lease terms. They had used my stability to purchase their luxury. I looked at the co-lessee section again. Grant Richards, my father. The structure of the loan was diabolical. By making me the primary lessee, the liability fell 100% on me. If the payments were missed, the repo man would come looking for me, not him, but by adding himself as a co-lessee, he gained legal access to the vehicle. He could drive it. He could insure it. He could hand the keys to Sloane and tell her to have fun. It was the perfect parasitic relationship codified in ink. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was Sloane. Sloane. Gabby, seriously, pick up. The dealer called Dad. They are asking why you called customer service. You are going to get us in trouble. I stared at the message. You are going to get us in trouble. She knew. For years, Sloane had played the role of the oblivious, scatterbrained artist. She was just bad with money. She just didn't understand forms. She was innocent. But you do not accidentally drive a car that requires a credit check. You know you cannot pass. You do not accidentally accept a $35,000 vehicle without asking who signed the papers. She knew I wasn't there to sign. She knew Dad couldn't qualify a loan. She knew exactly whose blood was fueling her engine. And she didn't care. As long as the heated seats worked and the Bluetooth connected to her playlist, she was willing to look the other way while our parents committed a felony against her own sister. I typed a reply. My fingers hit the glass with hard, deliberate taps. Me. I am not getting you in trouble. Sloane, you got yourself in trouble when you drove a stolen car off the lot. I hit send. Then I blocked her number. I turned back to the laptop. I had the who, the when, and the how. Now I needed to execute the what now. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the Federal Trade Commission's identity theft portal. My hands were steady now, the emotional part of my brain, the part that wanted to cry because my mother loved a Honda CR-V more than she loved me, had shut down. The project manager was in full control. Step 1. Place a fraud alert. I filled out the form. I entered my social security number. The real one. The one that belonged to me, not to the family corporation. I checked the box for identity used to open fraudulent accounts. Step 2. File a police report. This was the nuclear option. This was the point of no return. Once I filed an official report stating that my parents had forged my signature, it became a matter of public record. It became a criminal investigation. I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. I thought about the permission slip I threw away when I was 8. I thought about the $2,000 for Sloane's shoplifting. I thought about the Alaska trip I had canceled, and the way my mother had screamed about the money instead of apologizing for the betrayal. If I stopped now, if I just paid the lease, if I just handled it one last time, nothing would change. They would wait 6 months, then it would be a house, then it would be a business loan. They would consume me until there was nothing left but a husk of a credit score and a bitter, empty woman. I was not going to be that woman. I opened the tab for the St. Louis Police Department's online reporting system. I began to type. Incident type: identity theft, fraud. Suspect relationship: parents, immediate family. Description of incident: on October 4th, 2 individuals used my personal identifying information without my consent to secure a vehicle lease agreement with Honda Financial Services. I typed every detail. I attached the photos of the lease. I attached the email screenshot. I attached the text messages where they admitted to handling it. I reviewed the report. It was clinical. It was devastating. I moved the cursor to the submit button. But before I clicked, I had one more call to make. Not to them, never to them. I picked up the hotel room phone and dialed the number for the Honda dealership listed on the lease agreement. Sales department, please, I said when the receptionist answered. This is Bob in sales. A jovial voice answered. How can I get you into a new ride today? Hi, Bob, I said. This is Gabriella Richards. You sold a black CR-V to a Grant Richards yesterday. Oh, yes. The birthday present. Great family. Your dad was so excited. I bet he was, I said. Bob, I am looking at the lease agreement right now. It says I signed it on October 4th. That is right, Bob said, his voice faltering slightly. You came in with your folks. We got it all sorted. Bob, I said. my voice dropping an octave. I live in Chicago. I was in Chicago on October 4th. I have credit card receipts and building access logs to prove it. I was not in your office. I did not sign that paper. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. The jovial salesman was gone. In his place was a man realizing he was about to lose his job. "Ma'am," he stammered. "Your father. He said he had a woman with him. She had your ID." "That was my mother, Bob," I said. "And unless your eyesight is terrible, you should have noticed she is 60 years old." She stayed in the car mostly," Bob said, his voice panic-stricken. "Your dad brought the papers out to her. He said she was feeling sick." "So you witnessed a signature you didn't see happen?" I asked. "Look, we can fix this," Bob said. "Bring the car back. We will tear up the contract. No harm, no foul, right?" "The car isn't the problem anymore, Bob," I said. "The problem is that you facilitated identity theft. I am filing a police report right now, and I just wanted to let you know that you are named in it." "Wait, please." I hung up the phone. I looked at the submit button on the police report form again. I clicked it. The screen refreshed. "Your report has been submitted. Case number 2024-89901. I wrote the number down on the hotel notepad. The bomb had been dropped. The explosion was silent, invisible, and traveling through the digital infrastructure of the banking and legal systems, it would hit my parents' house in about 24 hours. And when it did, there would be no amount of understanding that could save them. The next morning, I did not go to brunch. I went to a coffee shop with strong Wi-Fi and a quiet corner, and I proceeded to erect a digital fortress around my life. I logged into the websites of Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion for years. I had left my credit open, trusting in the general safety of the system. I had been naive. The threat was not a hacker in a basement in a foreign country. The threat was sitting at my parents' kitchen table. I initiated a security freeze on all 3 bureaus. I created pins that were complex strings of random numbers, ensuring that not even a lucky guess based on my birthday could bypass them. When the final confirmation screen appeared, stating that no new lines of credit could be opened in my name without my explicit unfreezing, I felt a physical weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. The tap was not just turned off. The pipe was welded shut. At 1 o'clock, I met with Alan, a civil attorney recommended by a colleague back in Chicago. We met in his office downtown, a space that smelled of old paper and expensive mahogany. I laid everything out on his desk: the lease agreement, the emails, the police report case number, and the rejection letters from the bank that I had found in my mother's digital trash bin, evidence that they had tried and failed to get the car on their own before using my name. Alan looked over the documents with a neutral expression. He was a man who had seen families destroy each other over far less than a Honda CR-V. "You have a slam-dunk case for fraud," he said, tapping the lease. "But you need to be prepared for what happens when we push this button. Once I send the demand letter to the dealership and the demand letter to your parents, the dealership is going to panic. They will likely void the contract to avoid the liability of the forged signature. They will want the car back immediately." "Good," I said. "They can have it." "And your parents," he continued, looking at me over his glasses, "if the dealership voids the contract based on fraud, they might press charges against your father to recoup their losses, or if the police follow up on your report, the state might pick it up. Your father could be facing felony charges, forgery, identity theft, grand larceny." He paused, giving me an out. "Most children back down at this point. They pay the least to keep daddy out of jail." I looked at the framed diploma on the wall. I thought about the $300 a month. I thought about the Alaska trip. I thought about the way they looked at me, not as a daughter, but as a harvestable crop. "I am not sending him to jail," I said clearly. "He sent himself to jail when he signed my name. I am just turning on the lights. Whatever happens after that is his responsibility." Alan nodded. "All right, we proceed." By 4 o'clock, the letters were sent via courier. Electronic notifications were dispatched. The machinery of the law had engaged. The reaction was almost instantaneous. My phone, which I had turned back on to communicate with the lawyer, began to light up, but the tone had shifted. The anger was gone. The accusations of selfishness had evaporated. In their place was a terrified, desperate pleading that was far harder to listen to than the screaming. First came the texts from my mother. Mom, the dealership just called. They said they are sending a tow truck. Gabriella, please, the neighbors will see. Mom, your father is shaking. He's having chest pains. Do you want to kill him? Mom, we are sorry. We messed up. We will pay you back. Just stop the police. Just call the dealer. I read them, and I felt a pang of old guilt. The muscle memory of a lifetime of conditioning. Chest pains. That was their ace in the hole. Whenever the consequences got too real, someone got sick. Someone had a crisis. Someone needed to be saved. But I remembered the lawyer's words. He sent himself to jail. I typed a single response to my mother. Me. If he is having chest pains, call 911. I am not a doctor. I am not the police. And I am not the leasing agent. I cannot stop what is happening. Then came Sloan. Sloan, you are actually ruining my life. I have a date tonight. I have work tomorrow. How am I supposed to get there? Sloan, I can't believe you are doing this over a car. You have so much money. You are so stingy. Sloan, please, Gabby, I will pay you. I promise. Just let me keep it for a week until I figure something out. I didn't reply to her. There was nothing to say. Sloan was realizing that figuring something out was about to become her full-time job. Then my father called. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I needed to hear it. I needed to hear the shift to know that it was real. I answered, Gabriella. His voice was trembling. It sounded small. The booming, confident baritone of the party was gone. The police were here. A detective. He asked about the signature. I told you I filed a report, I said. You have to drop it, he begged. Gabby, honey, please, a felony record? I will lose my pension. I will lose the consulting license. You can't do this to your old man. I didn't do it, Dad, I said. You did. You walked into that dealership. You brought Mom to pretend to be me. You practiced my signature. You did all of that. We were desperate, he cried. We were just trying to help Sloan. No, I said, my voice can. You were trying to maintain an image you couldn't afford. You wanted to be the big man who buys his daughter a car, but you wanted me to pay for the applause. I will pay you back. He wept. I swear. With what money? I asked. The money you don't have for groceries? The money you don't have for the roof? We are family, he shouted, the anger bleeding back in through the cracks of his fear. Family protects each other. Exactly, I said. And for 31 years, I have protected you. I protected you from your bad math. I protected you from your lack of planning. I protected you from reality. But today, I am protecting myself. They are taking the car, he said, his voice breaking again. The truck is in the driveway. Give them the keys, Dad, I said, and don't sign anything. I hung up. I walked to the window of the coffee shop. I looked out at the street. People were walking by, living their lives, worrying about dinner or deadlines. They had no idea that a few miles away, a suburban facade was crumbling. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't triumph. It was the feeling of a bone being set. It hurt. It was grinding and sharp. But I knew that for the first time, it was going to heal straight. I had spent my life building a wall to shield them from the wind. I had just taken a sledgehammer to it. And now, they were finally going to feel the cold. I checked my email. A notification from the travel agency popped up. Refund processed. The $8,000 was on its way back to me. I opened my banking app. The $300 transfer was still absent. I was safe. My credit was frozen. My assets were liquid. My liability was zero. I ordered another coffee, black. There was one last thing to do. The car was gone. The police were involved. But the circle wasn't closed yet. I had one final piece of business to attend to before I flew back to Chicago. I had to face them one last time, not as a victim and not as a prosecutor, but as a witness to the aftermath. I needed to return the box. I pulled up to the curb just as the flatbed tow truck was securing the chains around the rear tires of the black Honda CR-V. It was a humiliating spectacle. The neighbors, the ones who had been so impressed by the balloons and the catered food yesterday, were now peering through their blinds or watering their lawns with intense dedication, watching the repo man reclaim the Richards family's pride. Sloane was standing on the porch, hugging her arms around herself. She was not screaming. She was not fighting. She just looked small, without the car, without the keys to flash, without the prop that made her feel successful. She was just a 30-year-old woman living in her parents' basement who had been caught red-handed. I waited until the truck drove away, the Honda bouncing slightly on the bed, before I got out of my rental. I walked up the driveway. I did not look at Sloane. I walked past her, through the open front door, and into the house. It was quiet inside. The manic energy of the party was gone. The desperate scrambling of the morning was gone. What remained was the heavy, suffocating silence of defeat. My parents were in the living room. My father was slumped in his recliner, staring at the blank television screen. He looked 10 years older than he had yesterday. The police detective had come and gone. The dealership had come and gone. The reality of what he had done, the felony he had committed to save face, was finally sitting in the room with him. My mother was on the sofa, clutching a tissue, her eyes red and vacant. When I walked in, they didn't yell. They didn't beg. They barely looked up. The fight had been drained out of them by the sheer weight of the consequences I had unleashed. I didn't sit down. I walked over to the dining room table. The debris of the party was still there. A half-eaten cake, crumpled napkins, empty cups, and there, pushed to the side near the centerpiece, was the silver box. The wrapping paper was torn, but the lid was still there, and the card was still taped to it. I picked it up. I walked back into the living room and placed the box on the coffee table. Right in front of them. It made a hollow sound against the wood. "Look at it," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the silence of the room, it carried like a bell. My mother flinched. My father slowly turned his head. I tapped the cream-colored envelope on the lid. "To Gabriella," I read. "Happy birthday." I looked at them. "You wrote my name on this box. You used my name on the lease. You used my name to look successful to your friends. You used my name to fix your credit." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But you never actually gave me anything. You only took. You took my name, and you filled it with your debts. You took my loyalty, and you filled it with your needs." "We just wanted everyone to be happy," my mother whispered, her voice cracking. "We thought you could handle it." "I did handle it," I said. "I handled it by stopping it." I looked at the empty box. It was the perfect metaphor for my relationship with them. Shiny on the outside, promising on the label. But inside, it was just a vehicle for someone else. "The lease is void," I said, listing the facts with the cold precision of a final audit. "The car is gone. The police report is on file. If the dealership decides to press charges for the fraud, that is between you and them. I am not involved anymore. My credit is frozen. My transfers are canceled. You are on your own." My father let out a long, shuddering breath. "What are we going to do, Gabby? Without your help, without the buffer?" "You are going to figure it out," I said. "Just like I had to figure out how to pay for my own permission slips. Just like I had to figure out how to buy my first car. You are going to grow up." I looked at Sloane, who had wandered into the room and was leaning against the doorframe. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and resentment, but the arrogance was gone. She knew now that the ATM was broken. She knew that the next time she quit a job, there would be no safety net to catch her. "I canceled the Alaska trip," I said. "The refund hit my account this morning, $8,450. My mother squeezed her eyes shut, a fresh tear leaking out. "I am not keeping the money in savings. I continued. I booked a new trip. I am going to the Amalfi Coast. I rented a villa. I am going to drink wine and eat pasta and look at the ocean. And I am going solely as Gabriella. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, just as me. You are really leaving us? My father asked. It was a whisper of disbelief. No, Dad, I said. I never really arrived. You never saw me. You only saw what I could provide. I reached out and touched the silver box one last time. You can keep the box, I said. It is the only thing you have left with my name on it. I turned around and walked to the door. Gabriella, my mother called out. It was a weak, desperate sound. I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. I walked out of the house, past Sloane, and down the driveway. The sun was high in the sky. The humidity of St. Louis hit me, but for the first time, it didn't feel oppressive. It felt like warmth. I got into my rental car and started the engine. I checked my phone. I had an email confirmation for my flight to Italy. I had a message from my lawyer saying the fraud alert was fully active. I had a bank account that was entirely 100% mine. I looked at the house in the rearview mirror as I drove away. It looked smaller than I remembered. It wasn't a monument to family anymore. It was just a house, and the people inside were just people who had made a bad bet against the wrong person. I turned the corner and the house disappeared from view. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just drove. For 31 years, I had been the gift that was passed around, re-gifted, and used up. But today, I had taken myself back out of the box, and I was never, ever going back in. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment down below and share your location and your thoughts on how I handled my family. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so we can share this journey with even more people.